Hello, everyone. We're glad you're here. Welcome to our podcast, Foundations, Expert Concrete Training and Adventures, hosted by concretepreneur and industry-recognized expert David Stephenson, and joined by new guests every episode. David has been in the concrete industry for over 20 years as a contractor, operator, owner, product developer, and consultant, and has started, grown, and sold contracting companies as well as chemical manufacturing and equipment companies, and is currently the principal consultant with PCC Consulting. With clients ranging from the NFL to Amazon to the Department of Defense, the largest and most recognized brands have consulted with David for their programs and project issues. Foundations is a free podcast for general as well as specialized contractors, owners, designers and architects, developers, and other concrete enthusiasts who may enjoy and benefit from being a part of conversations David has with industry leaders and some of the incredible people he's worked with over his career. We discuss where the industry has been, where it's going, and adventures to be had along the way. Now, here's your host, David Stephenson, interrupted with the occasional question by me, Rachel Fisher.
So
well, let's start talking. Let's go back to your house. So you're building it out of
So
insulated panels.
building a house, building using structural insulated panels from a company called Eco Panels. Built a little he shed in the backyard to test my theory.
Okay.
And then this is out in Powhatan, so it's probably like maybe 10-15 minutes from here.
Okay.
And it was just one of those deals where we said, hey, we're gonna. I was telling you, I'm in this group called EO, Entrepreneurs Organization. And it's a great group of people to hang out with because they give you a lot of, they push you, they understand your life, owning a company and doing stuff like that. The downside is they push you and they understand your life. So there's not a lot of, I feel bad for you. It's just, hey man, get it together and get going.
Yeah.
So part of that was we just kind of gotten set in what I was doing with concrete. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, man, I needed to be pushed, shoved out of that comfort zone into the next one.
Were you plateaued size-wise, market penetration? What was going on? Why did you need to get pushed?
The company was doing well, but I had a lunch meeting with some of the guys from EO, and I was listening to a guy kind of bemoaning the startup phase, the growth phase. He's like, man, I'm doing these 80-hour weeks. I'm doing all this kind of stuff like that. And I was just like sitting there listening to him. I'm like, I remember that. And I remember all of the energy and the drive and the fear that goes into it. And I realized, I was like, man, I don't have that going right now. And maybe I need that just to kind of bump to the next level. And I didn't necessarily know what it was. It wasn't anything related to my polishing business. It was really the success of polishing business that had put me in a place where I was like, hey, I've got somebody that's running it for me. I've got processes that are in place and stuff like that. So I recently hired a business coach, and she was kind of helping me with a lot of things. And then all in like 1 week, my our neighborhood became very political I think every neighborhood became political there for a while. And I didn't necessarily fit in my neighborhood anymore. And that bothered me. Our kids were going to college, so our house wasn't the house that we needed or wanted at that time necessarily. And then there was just that something in my, and so my coach is like, I looked at my wife, I was like, we should build a house. I want to build another house. What do you think? And I found a piece of property. I was driving around, found a piece of property. And that's just kudos to my wife. I come in one day, I'm like, hey, I would like to buy this piece of property like today and go just plan on building a house out of these structural insulated panels that I tested in our backyard. And she said, okay, sure, let's do it.
Yeah.
And I was like, don't say sure, let's do it. She really mean sure, let's do it. And so sure enough, she was like, yeah, let's do it. Let's go for it. And so we bought the piece of property, signed up for it. And I think it was a Friday. I had a coaching meeting with my coach, Dee Clevett, and I was talking to her about some stuff. I didn't even mention the fact that I was doing the house. And she said, Chad, you need to become a business coach. I was like, isn't that like the blind leading the blind? I mean, I hired you, and now you're telling me I should do this for other people. And it's one of those things where you don't know what you know. because you assume everybody knows what you know. And
it's the Indians and the Pilgrims.
Yeah, you're like,
Pilgrims are starving in a land where everything will grow. And the Indians are going, why are you starving? When you literally have all the things you need to grow whatever you want to grow, but they assumed that the Pilgrims knew what they needed to know and just weren't doing it.
It's funny. It's like,
and the Pilgrims are like, from the other side of the world, we have no clue what it's going to take to grow stuff here. So they were starving.
Yeah,
same thing.
Innovative, amazing ideas are common knowledge to somebody, you know, in a lot of cases. And that was one of those things where it's like, it's not that I'm smarter or better than any of my clients. It's just I've run down the road a little bit further, and you know, I hit thorny patches, I've hit mud holes and potholes and stuff like that. And I'm like, hey, I can tell you there's one right in here, and I can tell you how to avoid it. And if you hit it, the good thing is I know how to get out of it. And if you don't mind picking up my shoe, it's probably still down there. You know, so we started that business coaching, and then started building a house.
Decided to be a business coach,
and then
decided to build the house all at one time.
All at one time, and then so that Friday, I was headed out of town that weekend. And on that Friday, I was like, you know, I'm just going to upload pictures of my house on Zillow because the market's crazy. And we'll see what it does. And so I said, well, you know, I'll upload it, see how it goes. And I didn't expect it to go, but so fast. But by Sunday, we had a whole bunch of people looking at our Zillow offer and wanting to meet. I didn't even put any interior photos up.
Yeah.
So I came back Monday and told my wife I had put it on Zillow. In hindsight, I probably should have mentioned this to my wife before putting it on Zillow. And I said, you know, hey, put the house on Zillow. We got some people going to come and take a look at it. And, you know, she was, of course, she was kind of upset. She's like, you know, it's not clean. It's not straight. It's ripped in. I was like, yeah, but I don't even really care if I sell it right now. And if they want to come look at it and see what it looks like when they move in and live here for a few years, then this will be what it looks like. This is a good glimpse of the future, you know, as is. So then I uploaded some interior photos, and sure enough, man, somebody came in, they looked at it. And when that person set their appointment, 2 realtors had also called, say, hey, can we come look, you know, afterwards as well. So this person comes in and looks at our house. There's 2 realtors sitting in the cul-de-sac waiting to come in behind them. It's this crazy market. People look at it and they're like, we love it. And they offered over asking. I don't even know how to close on that thing. I don't know how to sell a house, you know, like without a realtor or anything like that. I mean, literally it was on Zillow and Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah.
And so the realtor said, hey, would you pay a realtor's fee? You know, the 3% or whatever, and I'll do all the work. I was like, yeah, that actually sounds really good to me. It was the easiest thing. It was, so that sold. And then my wife flew to California to visit one of her friends. And then she got on the plane and she's like, you realize we're now homeless. I'm like, we are not homeless. We're building a house. We're going to have to rent an apartment or something. And we have a beach house. I said, we're not homeless. And she goes, we don't have a home we can live in. And I think that might've been one of the last things she said. She was getting on a plane to fly to California. So while she was gone, I sold her car. Again, sounds bad. I mean, as I'm listening to this, doesn't sound like good relationship advice, but I never claimed to be a therapist for that. But sold I put the Suburban. I was like, man, this is easy. This is easy. So I was like, I'll put my Suburban up on Facebook Marketplace. And a car dealer bought it off of Facebook Marketplace. So she lands coming back from California. I was like, hey, by the way, I sold your Suburban. And she was not thrilled about it, but she does know that, you know, I'm not going to sell it and not have a plan. So I sold it and then bought her a nicer car that I'm a little jealous of now. Big time jealous.
What'd you buy her?
She has a BMW X7, which is, that's probably the fastest vehicle we've ever owned.
Yeah.
It's so quick. Just the M series thing or whatever. But so love that. She's super excited about it. So yeah, just kind of did that. Changed the whole dynamic of Concreate, how we do really
everything virtual except for the guys. Everything
is remote now.
Yeah.
There's a silver lining coming out of the COVID stuff. You know, everyone's like, oh, COVID. And I'm so tired of hearing COVID. But this one really was something that came out of COVID where it used to be, I want you on the site, doing a meeting, you know, all the time, status updates every week and stuff like that. And it was a pain. Well, COVID all of a sudden made it where they were like, hey, you can't be here.
Yeah.
So everybody was forced to adapt. And then we embraced it. And so we brought on remote project managers. And I say remote, it doesn't mean that you're outsourcing stuff to other countries, though we do that also. It means you're not in my office.
Yeah.
And you're not on the job site. And so, we have a project manager that's in the Philippines now. We had one that was in Mexico. We have an estimator that is based in India. I have my executive assistant is in Philadelphia. My general manager is 3 miles down the road from where we are now. My project manager is about 2 miles down the road, but we all meet on Zoom and virtually, and then we get together probably once a week in person, just for the whole culture side, as much as we can be in, but it's really just the general manager and the PM and and then all the field guys, and we stay on job sites. And if you cultivate that culture of, hey man, how are we going to operate in a remote way and stay connected, then it can be super efficient. And that's what we've seen. I had a big commercial building. I rented out half of it. Now the other half I rent out also. I have a storage. It's another warehouse, but it's much smaller, and we keep all of our equipment there. We have an office there that we don't use. And
but the rent from the building pays for the little office.
Oh yeah. Renting the building now, that's a net positive thing. So that works out really, really well for for cash flow and overhead and things like that, but also just efficiency, just keeping us so, the more room you have to store stuff, more stuff you're going to store. And so it worked out pretty interesting, just kind of the progression of it all coming through. And then that spawned, how are we going to do like what do I do now? I got a general manager doing great. So my business coach like, start a business, do coaching, you're going to have to do something, so do that. And so that started this thing called Laminin Coach. And so now I coach other contractors who are kind of going through the same stuff I do. And a lot of what I do is say, hey, let's go and look at every job description you have, because nobody's running out of, work to do, and nobody's got more people than they have to do the work. Everybody's looking for good people. So our thing is, how can you leverage, like you've got one really good project manager and they can handle 6-7 projects at a time. That's awesome. So now you need 2 project managers, but what if instead you could have 2 project coordinators or project administrators that support your one project manager? Now that one project manager can handle 10 or 12 jobs. So you can leverage more of them doing what they love to do and they're really good at, and you can outsource or remote work the people that are doing the data entry, follow-up, submittals, certificates of insurance,
right?
All the stuff that a PM hates doing anyway. Let's keep them on the job site, and let's keep everything that is not job site related off of their plate. Which means they do it better. Somewhere out there are people who live and die and love to reconcile checkbooks. It's not me. And I don't know what's wrong with them, but there's something. But they get up and they love that stuff. There's people that would hate to just randomly drive to a place and do a podcast. That's not you. You don't mind doing that. But there's somebody else who would have a heart attack if they were told to go do that. There's people that don't want to do presentations. So everybody has their niche. And so it's just taking the same general contracting model. Got roofers and framers and floor guys. You have stair guys. I found out now that framers don't do stairs. I didn't realize that was a thing until building a house. Very, very specialized, but we just take that to the next level down and say, okay, here's all of my documentation and administrative work. Here's all of my HR, and we have a person for each slot that it fills into. And so it makes it much, much better.
How do you find your coaching clients if they're in a lot of ancillary industry?
So I stay in construction. Generally it's contractors that I have met on job sites or have worked with or worked around. And then typically, they just come in, we start a conversation and say, hey, how come I haven't seen you on a job site lately? Well, actually I'm doing this. And how in the world are you doing that? And then it just opens up the conversation of what I'm doing. And it takes them. So I had to become secure, and I think I'm just now getting to where I'm secure enough to say, hey, I'm a business coach, because before I was just kind of low key about it. My coach was giving me a hard time. She said, why aren't you telling people what you do? And I was like, because then it'd be real. Or I was worried, could I really make a difference? But
and how long have you been doing it?
I started it in January. And so, there's not a whole lot of clients. Like right now, I think I have 4 clients, and I meet with each one once a week. And then I have a team of people that that goes in behind me and does a lot of the kind of the action items that are associated with our meetings.
So when you talk to them each week, do you go through like the challenges they face that week or big issues going on in the company, or do you focus more on directional growth versus the here and now?
It's funny. A lot of it is neither, which is kind of weird. Like people are like, well, why should I hire you, Chad? So you don't hire me to grow sales. You don't hire me to do a marketing plan or do stuff like that. Though I know how to do some of those things. You hire me if you're like, if I get everything done this year that I would like to get done, here's the project I'm going to work on next year. That would make my company so much better.
Mm-hmm.
That project I do for you now. So if you're like, man, I just wish there was a way that I could get this thing that I feel like is important to make my company go forward, but I can't get away from the work long enough for me to do that, then I take that task on, and kind of like my whole thing is like, I'm you long enough for you to be you.
Gotcha.
So we kind of run, and I don't come in and tell you, hey, David, you need to have a CRM, and here's the CRM you should have. Good luck.
Yeah.
We come in and say, hey, man, you should have a CRM. This is the CRM that I know and I use, and it works for me. What I'm going to do is set that up in your company. I'm going to get all your people on board. We're going to get your licenses. We're going to get everything set. And then we're going to go and we're going to train the people around you to use that CRM. And then eventually we're going to come back and we're going to tell you about it. That's because these guys that I work for, or these people that I work with, they're not sitting on loads of free time.
Sure.
So the idea is that you can't leave a meeting with me with a to-do list. You leave a meeting with me and I have a to-do list.
Okay.
And then I get you to agree and trust with enough authority to say, Chad, go do this. And then our team goes and does it. And then we keep you abreast of it, but we're kind of operating in the background. With most of them, one of the very first things we do is we hire an administrative assistant, a dedicated assistant. Yeah, that's life-changing. That is crazy, the difference.
I hired my first one. She's been working for me for 2.5 years.
It's such a difference, and I think the big mistake that people make with that, I did it 3 times, and the 3rd time was successful. The first 2 were terrible.
What do you think is the biggest mistake you made?
It's the person. It's me. It's you.
Mm-hmm.
It's saying, I want an administrative assistant. That's great. And then they don't want to turn over the things, or they don't know how to turn over the things. One of the biggest, most common mistakes I see is, I need to reschedule my dentist appointment. Well, I'm not going to ask my administrative assistant to do that because that's not business related.
Right.
You absolutely ask your administrative assistant to do that. That's what your VA or EA, that's what they do. One, they're better at it than you are. They know where the hell you're going to be. And they also probably know you need a dental appointment. But that's what you do is you have them do it, because that takes you away from business. And if that takes you away from the business time, then it's worth having your assistant do it. That's making it better for the company. So a lot of frustration with that, with guys are like, man, I just don't feel like it's appropriate. And like, dude, this is what it is. This is how you use them. And then your schedule. I had a guy who was lamenting me, and then he goes, man, my EA just wants to take over my whole schedule and tell me where to be all the time. I was like, yeah, that's kind of in their job description. I mean, if they're not doing that, he's like, well, how do I handle that? I was like, you let them do it.
Yeah.
But there is a degree of that goes away. And also telling business owners who have bootstrapped and done everything on their own and done all that kind of stuff. And they say, well, I can do it. Yeah. And he says, but what if they're not as good at it as I am? Well, that comes up with a lot of stuff, but generally they're better at it than you are. The other thing is, if they did it 80% as well as you think you're going to do it, that's exceptionally better than you're actually doing it. And
have you ever asked them the question, show me one day of your to-do list, and then show me yesterday's to-do list, and show me how much of those things yesterday you've done?
It's just one list. It's the same one you've been operating off of for the last year.
Because you'll add 30 things each day and get 12 of them done. And then the others just move to the next day, and then they get reprioritized based on existing things that are going on in your life right then. So you never get done. You never get caught up.
It is. It's great. And then people ask, they say, well, hey, how do you figure out what to outsource? That's one of the things. Like, what do you figure out what to delegate and stuff like that? And so we run through a series of questions like that. Of, you don't have to figure, what are you good at? A lot of people, if you ask them, what are you good at? Sometimes they don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. And it used to be an intimidating question. What are you good at? Because it sounds arrogant to say you're good at something, you know, and or maybe you say something that you're really not good at and somebody in the room knows it. So they point, that's not your strength, Chad. So I have 4 kids and a wife, and there's plenty of people that told me what I'm not good at.
Sure.
And that's really what you need to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody tells you you're not good at it, or you procrastinate about doing it, you should delegate it. Because that is the stuff you should not be spending your time on. If you love it, then you'll be good at it.
When I try to explain, well, even if you love it, I don't know that you're going to be good at it.
That is true.
Here's how I explain it too. So first, when I started Polished Concrete Consultants, which has been 12 years now,
It goes quick, doesn't it?
Yeah, I kind of started doing coaching a little bit like you are, and then I just called it general business. So, you know, I'd already started and grown contracting company, manufacturing companies, and sold them and done all this stuff, right? So I started from like 10 grand is what I started my first company with,
yeah.
You know, and 20 years later selling it for a lot. And so I started working with contractors doing a lot of the same kind of things that you're doing. Okay, you know, I went through this. This is my 3rd time through this, down this road. Here's what's going to happen at the end, right? So when I'm explaining, like, you know, job duties or owner, a lot of times, you know, the owner, dude, I know you like doing that, but that person's doing it a lot better. We need to box you out and let them do their job that you hired them to do without your interference, because they do so much better whenever you're not, you know, on top of it.
Yeah.
So I use football as explain it. I said, you know, I mean, I'm a big dude. I'm 6'6", 350, right? And I've been a big dude since I was born.
Yeah, my door was nervous when you showed up.
Yeah. And so, you know, I use myself as the example. I may love the idea of running the football or catching passes, but that's not what I'm made for. No matter how much, no matter how hard I work, no matter how hard I work out, no matter how much diet I do or anything else in my life, and I played football for a lot of years, I would never be a great wide receiver, no matter what. So at some point, some coach somewhere along the line said, no, I'm sorry, David, you know, you don't get all the glory that the running back or the wide receivers get. You don't get to celebrate touchdown in the end zone, but you're going to allow those guys to do their job better by you doing what you're made to do, what your strength is.
Yeah.
So let's stop trying to let you focus on that, and let's focus on how to get you better at the thing that you're already pre-made to be good at. When I explain it like that, a lot of times, for me at least, you know, owners get it. Okay, you know, I'm a wide receiver. I'm 5'5", 125 pounds. I'm not going to be an offensive tackle. Not going to be a nose guard or something like that.
I tried it and it hurts.
Yeah. Like, you're the same size as one of my legs.
That's right.
I don't think you're going to stop me from either stopping you or moving forward, one way or another. I'm doing.
I mean, I catch that ball, but if I do,
and so, you know, I think that is a challenge that a lot of business owners and even people that are not owners but are in business a lot, is people want to take on more positions than what they're functionally best at. And a lot of times they want to take the reps away from people that are much better at that position than they are, because it's a mindset of thinking, I have to do it. Yeah. I'm going to do it better. Well, I'm going to make the right choice. I'm going to make the choice that's best for the company, or I'm going to make the choice that's best for my people or my family or whatever it is. And it's hard to kind of turn that loose sometimes.
Yeah. And I see it that way and the other way of, I don't like doing it. I would feel bad asking somebody else to do it.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh no, there's no guilt there, man.
Right.
Because somebody loves doing what you're doing.
That's right.
Somebody likes being the wide receiver. I don't want to run that much.
That's right.
You know?
Yeah.
And so it's, you know, let people be free to do what it is they were meant to do.
40-yard dash, man. I need a 10-yard dash. Let somebody else take the 40. I'll take the 10.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Hell on earth for 10 yards. After that, you're free to go.
Okay. So what are your goals for the business coaching?
So definitely want to grow it. It's faith is a big part of my life. That's why it's called Laminin Coach. That goes off of Louis Giglio's Laminin speech. And for me, it's, you know, obviously it's a new business to grow. That's always exciting and stuff like that. And also have to make sure that I don't take the take my eye off of concrete, because that's that's the business that got me here, and where I learned all these painful lessons. And so it's funny, coaching other people has made my concrete business much, much better. Because you have to eat your own dog food. You got to make sure that you're doing. If somebody rolls in and says, well, do you do that? You got to be able to, I mean, you can say yes, but it's better if you're honestly saying yes, because it is better for your company. And so for me, it's keep growing that, try to grow concrete as a model, and stay out of my general manager's way, which is, that's important. And I know it's important to him. It's important to me too. And then try to find more clients and stuff like that, because helping people do it, that's why I'm not the guy that, if you're just wanting to increase sales, I'm not the guy you would go to. But if you want to get home at 5:30 every day, and you want to get down to 5 days a week, and your company still grow and run more efficiently, that's what I help you with. If you want to try and figure out how to pay yourself, so when you're that's a big thing that's a huge proponent to me, is I run into too many owners and entrepreneurs who aren't paying themselves, and they think that they can't, or that they shouldn't, or they're paying themselves too little. So you get this tax thing at the end of the year. Your accountant's like, man, you killed it. You made a ton of money. And we all stand there and look at it and go, yeah, where is it?
Yeah.
So we use a program called Profit First to kind of push that forward of paying yourself out of every check that comes in. And even if it's just a little, pay yourself a sales commission, pay yourself this profit distribution. And that changes the mindset of how you look at your company dramatically. Like, I'm embarrassed how much it changed my activity level within concrete, and then other vicinities as well, because we take it off the principle of tithing. The idea is you should tithe from the very beginning, because if you do it in the beginning, you'll be good to go. It'll always happen. So you look at the last 3 years of your company and say, all right, well, what was my percent profit? And the net profit, what did it say it was? And let's say that you were 5%, say you were 50%, whatever it is. That money should somewhere theoretically be sitting in an account for you. So while taking that amount may seem too much for you at this time or whatever, so what we do is say, all right, what's a manageable amount? Could you take 5% of every check that came into your company, and put it in a profit account from the get-go? Because if you can't run your company on 95% of the money, you can't run your company on 100% of the money. So you put it in there, and then you grow. For me, the target is 10%. Put 10% in a profit account, and then don't share the value. Don't put that profit account value in your dashboard or anywhere like that. Huge fan of dashboards. Don't put it where you can see it, or where anybody can see it. That's not company money. That's profit. That's for the owners. And then every quarter, go back and revisit that profit account and say, all right, well, that's in there. I shouldn't need it. And so, if you already have a rainy day fund, great. If you don't, put half of it in your rainy day fund, and half of it you put in your pocket and you take home, and feel that feeling. It's fantastic. And then you are pumped up and charged, because people can stay excited for about 90 days. And so every quarter kind of works out pretty well. So 90 days you build that profit, and then when it gets in there, and then when you have a hard time, you'll see it in your profit account. You'll know from the very beginning where you are with stuff, because a lot of small businesses run by their checking account balance. And so if you've got a lot of money in your checking account, you're doing great.
You feel like you're doing good.
If you don't, you're not. And that's not true. So this helps put that aside and get it in there. So we're big fans of that. But yeah, just getting to where people can, you've gone through, like, you don't typically hire me when you're starting out. You would hire me as you kind of already run the gauntlet of, I made it through the first 4 or 5 years or something like that. You're at some level where now you're like, okay, man, these things are, you've held it all together. The duct tape is starting to kind of pull apart a little bit in some places, maybe even on the person themselves, trying to be able to kind of hold everything, because they've got it all on top of them. You say, hey man, I need somebody who can say, yeah, I've been there. I've kind of done that. I've experienced it. I know exactly what you're talking about, And you do want somebody sitting across the table from you, and you say, no, you don't understand. And they go, I totally understand what you're going through. And yes, you absolutely can do this. And That's awesome, man. I mean, when you sit down with a client after you've done a couple of projects, you do one thing that they've been wanting to do for 5-6 years, but they just couldn't tear themselves away from it.
Yeah.
But you need that owner mindset to do it. That's huge. I mean, it's
Well, plus that's probably good for you because you get these smaller projects in sometimes not even the same industry that you're working in that you get to go and complete without all the baggage of employees or running this or managing that. You know, you get to go focus on this task driven project and then see the results of the task driven project and how it affects the overall company. So it's got to be pretty satisfying for you personally.
It is the epitome of satisfaction.
Yeah.
It's so good. And then what's great is you're being paid by a client to help them solve a problem. And then you learn from it. And then you take that to another client. And now what was a product is now experience and now becomes another product. And so you start shifting them around so they are all helping each other. And then that's the idea of LAM. And you're just a connector that's pulling those pieces together and saying what we're learning over here, we can apply over there. What they learned, you can apply over here.
That's what I do as a consultant.
And it's just perfect. Yeah, I mean, that's the epitome of consulting. You know, that's the idea of, you know, take somebody else's scars and stories and go over here and use them in a preventative method. That's all of it.
Project yesterday down in Georgia, and it's they air and train the concrete, then power trowel it.
Oh yeah, close it right up.
Yep. So you have delaminations all over the place, and so you know we're talking through how to handle this. Right?
It could be a beautiful aggregate exposed job.
Yeah. And then you know I'm talking with the contractor who's doing the work, and he's like, "Oh, hey, you know, I should be able to use a ride-on power trowel for this." And I was like, I wouldn't, bud.
Not one you're a fan of. Not if you want to keep it.
Well, even beyond that, I said, you know, the speed variables that you're going to run, because he's going to run bush hammers first to take off the top. That was my process for removing that. And that came from like 15 prior projects where we tried everything under the sun on other people's projects over the years to go, okay, well, if you have this much weight, you know, so it's this size of machine, here's 6 models of equipment. You use one of these with, you know, bush hammer like this, and here's how you set your depth, and here's how you control. And this particular project has a very gradual slope. So trying to control the slope, okay, you can't go crossways, you've got to go lengthways with the slope, because if you go crossways, the weight on the front of your machine on the downhill side will leave bad, you know, you'll dig in every downhill that you go across. So you can't run crosswise until you hit 200 resins or higher, because you're going to dig in. And even then you got to watch it, because you can still leave some pretty good scratches if you don't watch them.
For sure.
And so he's, you know, the contractor's first time he's done a job like this. He's like, oh, I thought I could do this. I wouldn't do that. Here's what'll happen if you do this. Oh, I thought I could do this. You know, if you do that, this is what's going to happen. And it's going to cost you a little more work here. You're going to spend 20 to 25% more on your labor costs. You can do that, but here's a better way. And that all came from a bunch of prior projects over the last 20 years.
And that takes a lot of humility and trust. You know, you got to trust the consultant that you're hiring, you know, so there's pedigree and experience and stuff like that. And knowing that, you know, it is funny to me to see people hire someone and not like their answer, so they ignore it. You know, we're not just going to pay twice, because you're going to get to where their answer is, most likely, if they're a good consultant. You know, there's always more than one way to do it, but you know, you hire this person for their experience. So, you know, don't fight it, you know, be humble enough to say, there's some stuff I don't know, then go tackle it, use their method, and then proceed with it as you go. And I mean, you can learn, you just go flying through all the hurdles that other people have gone through already. And it's just such a better way, but it takes humility, you know, it takes something to say, I'm going to hire somebody, you know, and it's tough.
I will tell you that after 12 years of being a consultant, I very rarely will work for GCs, and I very rarely will work for contractors. I will, almost every time I'm working for the owner, and occasionally I'll work under an architect, but I'm basically for the owner just for convenience under the architect, but I'm the owner's consultant. And I do that because, exactly your point, you know, too many times I'll get hired by, say, a general contractor or a concrete contractor or whatever. And I'll go out there and I'll look at it and I'll say, you know, man, I know you asked me to come out to help you fix your color issue, but half the issue is the scratches that you've left in the floor. is destroying your ability to even see the color that you have in the floor because of a workmanship issue over here. Well, they don't want to hear that. Or the GC will say, I'll go review the job, look at it, figure out what's going on, write the report, submit the report, and the GC will come back with 93 corrections. Oh, you can't say this. Well, why can't I say that? I mean, they didn't follow the specs. I know, but we're bonding the concrete contractor. So if you say that, then the owner will put it back on us and we'll have to pay for the entire concrete contractor's work quality. What we need is the fix without the responsibility. Stuff like that. And it's just,
once that report's written,
eventually I threw up my hands and said, hey, I'm just not going to do this anymore. So occasionally I'll do it. And sometimes it still bites me. Even now, I'll get a project.
Well, it's hard when somebody says, man, I need some help.
Really need some help.
So hard to say no.
And I know the answer, and I know I can fix the problem, or at least tell them what's going on enough to where we can get the problem fixed. But so it still bites me, but I'd say 98% of my projects are for the owner.
You need 2 buttons on your report. Here's the price for you to take the report and act on it. Here's the price for me to forget I ever sent it to you.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Well, a lot of times, especially with contractors and GCs, and for those of you listening, all the contractors and GCs, this is just the way that it is. A lot of times I'll get my fee paid before I'll send them the report.
Well, the value of a service greatly decreases once rendered.
Right. And when you do things like, I travel all over the world all the time, dealing with issues, right? So, you're flying to Australia or to Italy or wherever, on an expense reimbursal plane ticket, where they called you on Tuesday. Yes. Say, I don't care what it costs, but I need you here by the end of the week.
I don't care what it costs you.
Yeah. And I'm like, well, okay, that ticket is $8,000. I'll do it, but I want a photograph of the check written before I even get on the plane. And the minute I land, I better have that check in my hand so that I can take the picture of it and deposit it in my bank while I'm standing on the, wherever you're picking me up, because that's a lot of risk, right? And if you just don't like my answers.
And it's opportunity cost. If you're not there, you could be somewhere else.
That's right. Yeah, I could be somewhere else.
It's twice as much. It's $8,000 ticket, but it's $8,000 I didn't get somewhere else today.
Right. So, so I was trying to remember when we met last. I think it was, it seems like almost 10 years ago. Last time I actually saw you.
I think that was out at, were we on a Navy job? I think it was a delamination job. And I think you were going to you were recommending bush hammering a job there. I forget what it was. It was but yeah, same kind of thing. They would have to get in a 1/4 of an inch, I think. And when you said bush hammer, I was like, yeah, that sounds like I remember when we did that. Yeah. I don't know. It's been quite a while. Yeah. And we're starting to be old enough to be in this thing for a while. I mean, 20 years of, I don't know. I mean, I've been doing polished concrete. Well, I've been doing polished concrete for 20 years. Concrete is 21 years old. Concrete can drink now. That's exciting.
That's right.
So, but I think we probably started polishing concrete truthfully maybe 3 years in. Like I think I bought a grinder. Matt Walker with Niagara Machine at the time sold me a grinder. Brought it to a job I was at, and he was like, hey man, we just wanted to use it to prep, just to kind of get ready for coatings that we were putting down at some lady's house. And he brought the grinder over and he's like, here it is. He goes, this thing will really
you can make it shiny too.
And no, he had the pads. He had a series of diamond pads with it. He goes, these came with it. I don't even know what these are. He goes, but if you figure it out, so I'm like, all right. So I sit down and I talk to the lady. I was like, hey, could I try something in here? And so I put the pads on it. We run all the way up and get all the way to that grinder was the original Workmaster, like Workmaster wrapped. I mean, it was like the little 15-inch Workmaster. That was the first one we had, and then we shipped it over and went to Prep Masters from then, and then kind of came up from there.
My first polish job. So I'd already been in business for a little while. I started doing acid stains and overlays, concrete overlays.
Oh yeah.
And I had Actually, it was a quick freeze place for Tyson's chicken. So they're just printing money.
Oh,
like
gotcha.
Chickens come in the door 24 hours later, they come out cold frozen and they charge like 50 cents, but like 25 years ago, 50 cents a chicken.
Oh,
and
yeah.
they're running through 30,000 chickens a day.
That's so many chickens.
In a 20,000 square foot building. And you're like 7 days a week, 365 days a year, very few people. It's all just conveyor belts and AC units, right?
Oh, yeah.
So guys like, printing money. And a GC that I was working for, that I'd already, been working for, handed me almost like a Polaroid photo. Said, my owner took this picture at a vineyard in California last week. He doesn't know what it is, doesn't care, wants this to be the floor in his office. I was like, doesn't care what it costs? Nope, doesn't care what it costs. This is just what he wants.
There you go.
So I took it to all my suppliers and nobody knew what it was except for one guy said, hey, last week, a guy drove through and was grinding off some stuff, and he's a distributor, and they just picked up, they call these grinders things. And the floor kind of looked a little bit like that. So I called that company, and it was a company, Vic International. And the very first machines I bought were red HTC machines.
Oh man,
that tells you how
that's way back.
Long it was, before HTC America, before any of that. I'm not going to tell you the names, but the guys that sold it to me are now, they run other things.
Yeah.
And the little salesman that came out that didn't know how to wire it, I got a picture of him, and he's now, is running another thing.
Running big things.
Yeah. These guys are all running big things because it's been that long. Yeah. So
it's and the industry's changed a lot. Some things about it haven't changed. It's like there's a lot of, you would think there'd be a lot of automation. You'd think there'd be still a lot of men behind grinders. Power trials is probably the biggest leap I've seen where it just changed completely. I mean, I don't know. The lithium densifier was a pretty big impact on the industry
for a period,
for like a short little period.
Yeah.
And then power trials to me seem like the next big marker where you're like, hey, things changed a lot.
The first one for me was when we invented dye, because that took it from industrial floor only to architectural. Yeah. And opened up schools and retail stores and churches and all kinds of stuff like that.
I got a lot of jobs I wish you hadn't created dye for.
Well, it did really well for my company because we kept it in-house for the first 2 years. So we were the only ones that could make all these awesome colored polished concrete floors when nobody else could.
Oh yeah.
So it really helped our company grow back then. But that made a big difference. The densifiers and just how that changed, that's made a big difference. The stain protect, I remember, so when I very first started, we didn't densify floors, and we didn't stain protect floors. The stain protect actually came along after dye, because you'd get on these floors. I remember it clear as day. In fact, it was Morningstar Elementary School in Bentonville, Arkansas.
Good old Bentonville.
We colored the floors, and there was a beautiful, there were big sections of a really rich green and a blue and a yellow. It's a decent sized school, all these really vibrant colors, but you could see every little chip through, because we didn't know things like, hey, you got to keep the screws out of lift tires. Yeah. Because it was 20 years ago, right?
This stuff is bulletproof.
So now I remember my guys literally laying on mechanics dollies with cut open water bottles full of acrylic sealer and little paint brushes, and they would roll along and dab a little bit of sealer in a chip so you could see the color.
Oh yeah,
because otherwise they just look white. And so it was immediately after that we talked to some of the distributors that were selling Ameripolish, or were going to be selling Ameripolish dye, and that's where we came up with stain protection, because it would show the color.
Yeah. Oh yeah, to enrich it.
Yeah.
Sure.
So all your top stain protection, that's what it was originally kind of for.
Yeah, how do I darken my chip?
But it completely changed the industry and let us do a lot more things, because now the floors weren't staining near as bad.
Yeah, and then you And then even still now, trying to find penetrants, and then the combination sealers and stuff like that.
Yeah. There's all kinds of cool technology that never even makes it to the light of day because the companies that are playing with it don't know whether it's actually going to sell any product or not. So they just kind of sit on it until somebody else comes up with something like it. Somebody smaller comes up with something like it that looks like it's selling a little bit, then they'll release it to the market.
Yeah.
There's, I think, the leaps in our industry. Well, we moved from, see what year, 2022, 98, we were 0% of the hard surface flooring market. So small that we couldn't even be measured.
Yeah.
In 2021, we surpassed 40% of the hard surface flooring market.
Yeah.
So, 20 years.
And in that 20 years, now I still run into people who are like, I've never even heard of polished concrete.
Sure.
And it's funny because, these are architects, these are decorators and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
It feels, again, it's somebody else's common knowledge. They don't even realize it's an option.
But to give you, think about this from a perspective standpoint, for VCT to get to 30% of the hard surface took 75 years. We've gone to 40% in less than 20 years.
Yeah, at the expense of a lot of VCT.
Yeah.
It's a lot of VCT that's not going down because of polished concrete now.
And there's more coming. There's some big things going right now that are changing even that dynamic. But so it's interesting. Sorry. As a consultant, the things that I see, and as a coach, the things that you see, a lot of times they're the same things.
Yeah.
But looking at them from different views, but coming to the same conclusions.
Yeah, you're probably seeing the result of what I am looking at. And, mine's the symptom and yours is kind of the disease of, here's what happens if you don't do this.
Right.
And so we're trying to get ahead of it. And so are you by saying, I can keep you from doing this again the next time.
Yeah.
What are is there one where you get a call and you're like, I know exactly what that is. I'm going to ride out there, but I know it because this is 9 out of 10 of the calls I get.
Only every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
The number of things that are new that I run into, probably 1 out of 40 projects that I go look at. Is it something that I haven't seen or dealt with before, or it's something that I dealt with on a minor scale that's now major? It's now a big problem. 95% plus, 98% plus it's repeating the same things. And so we were going to talk about kind of things that have changed over the last few years or things I'm doing. One of the things that I am doing, and this podcast is actually part of it, I find myself, 20 years ago, I was teaching classes, right? Architects, GCs, contractors, teaching classes. Mm-hmm. I find myself today still teaching a lot of the same things that I was teaching 15, 20 years ago. And it's frustrating on one hand, because sometimes I'm teaching the same people. Like I'll go out on a job site with a crew that I've worked with on 10 projects, something I taught them 5 years ago. I'm reteaching the same group of guys the exact same thing again. And they're like, oh, I forgot about that. Yeah. And I'm like, man, you just created, you lost your owner $175,000 on this job because of something that I taught you 3 years ago that you didn't implement here. And it's so frustrating. And then
because how many of the projects, when you go out on 40 projects, how many are fully preventable?
90% of the issues or more are preventable. And most of it's just either preparation or knowledge. It's just either you don't know what you're getting into, or you knew, but you didn't carry it forward.
Is it a lot of, disparate parties that aren't communicating? Like when you've got placement, you've got general contractor, you've got protection.
Those are all very big things. And, and I try to, I'll get back to where I was going in a minute, but I try to be an interesting spot because I try to help from birth to death. So I'll write the concrete place and finish specs. I'll write the polishing specs. I'll even write the maintenance spec before the job even starts. Then on site for concrete place and finish, on site for polishing sample review, on site for mid-project review, on site for punch review or final review, then maintenance training and help them buy the right stuff. That's a massive swath, right?
Oh yeah.
And helping the GC through construction, you know, what do I do when I had a, you know, steel beam fall and make a big hole in the slab? Oh, my guy left, you know, all this sitting on the slab and it rained for 5 days straight. Now we have rust marks everywhere. You know, I was on one the other day. We said diaper all the lifts, right? So they had a sky track, you know, 6 foot, 7 foot wide sky track, right? Yeah. I walk out into this long corridor, and this is a beautiful college campus, right? 3 stories tall, big open spaces, and they got the sky track up. And I walk out into the corridor, I'm looking down, and there's a spot of oil, like a 5-gallon bucket. And I walk like 30 feet, and there's another big spot of oil, like a 5-gallon bucket. And I look down the way, and I've got a great picture of this. They put a diaper on it. The diaper was so full of oil that it's dragging along the ground, and about every 20 feet, it would burp out enough oil to make a spot like the size of a 5-gallon bucket.
Oh man.
So they had a diaper on it, and you're like,
yeah,
what
how do you get
now I've got to go try to figure out how to get all that oil out of this really high visibility, high traffic, you know, area that the owner's paying a bunch of money to be right.
Do you see contracts? Do you see projects where they polished concrete is very successful and still economical, still budget friendly, still
most of the time? So I would say today 65 to 70% of my work as a consultant is managing programs. So I'll work for a big retailer, write their specs, help control their inputs. Okay, here's the products, here's the equipment, here's the contractors, here's all the levels everybody's got to be at to do work in this program. Here's the deliverables, here's how we're going to manage the quality control, here's the end result. Well, when you do it that way, 90% or better of the projects are successful.
And does that convey only to big contractors and stuff like that, or can small jobs run that same way? Can small contractors participate? Small regional contractors participate in programs like that?
Oh yeah. The usually, and there's an evolution to a retailer. So I'm gonna open the door here from the consultant that's working for the owner. That's right. There's evolution of programs. So I usually walk in the door for a new retailer, big retailer, small retailer. I've got some that are little gas station chains, you know, that have got 50 locations spread around 3 states or whatever. And I've got big, massive retailers that have 3,000 or 4,000 locations, and they're big and they're all over the country like a shotgun spread, right? There's the same evolution happens in those different groups. So I walk in the door and I say, listen, you know, I'm not a forever consultant. I'm going to help you. You're obviously, you wouldn't be talking to me if you didn't either not have a clue what you were going to do, or you've already been down the road and recognized failure and you want to try to make sure that you don't continue to fail. I'm going to take either 2 years or 3 years. It just depends on your people more than anything else. And we'll create the program. We'll build it out. We'll get our hands wrapped around the quality control things, the things that we are able to manage. And then we'll open it up a little bit more. I'll be training your project managers or on-site representatives, whoever you've got that's going to be managing this on the long term. I'll be training them. And then in a period of time, I'm going to turn you loose into the world. And you just call me back when you have a big problem, and I'll be happy to help you. But I'm going to turn you loose. So where, like in the beginning of those types of programs, if it's a smaller regional retailer, then I try to find smaller regional guys that will work in that territory that can help that retailer. It's a big national program. Probably one of the things that is hardest for the retailers, and it's hard for me too, is understanding that, well, I'll use one retailer that I'm working with right now. So they've been doing polished concrete at a very limited number of stores per year, say 20 stores per year for about 7 years. Of those 20 stores per year, so of their 150 stores, I've looked at probably 50 of them, and only like 3 of them were done well. The rest are cheapest guy, brother-in-law, guy's a tile contractor trying to do, one's a plumber trying to do polished concrete because he thought he could pick it up and knew the GC really well. And so here's this retailer, and they're like, well, we see that everybody else is doing polished concrete and the numbers seem to make sense, but we just don't have any success with it. So they're throwing up their hands saying, okay, we're not going to do polished concrete. Well, then their VCT supplier declares bankruptcy. Now they don't have a choice
like we'll
to get the VCT that they've been using. So now, and they've got some new blood in the upper management. So now they're going to make a big shift to polished concrete. Taking over that program, the very first thing I have to do is I have to take all the choice away from the GCs, all the options for somebody to call a project manager and convince them that they can do a job. I don't even care how good you are. I don't care anything. I've got to get my hands wrapped around it so that the first year, the ramp up year anyway, it's going to come very tight because I've got to set a new baseline.
How do you even do that? Because there isn't a contractor out there who doesn't pride himself on being able to change a spec, or substitute a spec. Do you just stick? Is it just a matter of rigidity?
Well, so I've developed a pretty good process for that, as you can imagine, after a bunch of them. The first thing is, as we've just been talking about, I've been in the industry way too long. I know too many people. I have too many friends. There's too many people that are, guys that used to work for me or, ex-business partner. I mean, it's just too twisty in the industry.
That many of us.
I've known too many people. So one of the challenges for me is to get it to where I'm not making the choice on who's in the program. So the way that I do that is I write the spec and I go to every retailer or every manufacturer in the spec. So all your chemical suppliers, your machinery suppliers, your repair material suppliers. And I say, listen, I need you to supply me with one contractor. Here's the qualifications. Maybe the one I'm doing right now, they have to be able to do 5 jobs at a time. They have to work in at least 5 states and have been in business for at least 5 years. Just real simple. And each manufacturer gets 1 submission. So I tell the manufacturer, make sure it's your guy because you want him using your stuff, right? Sure. But it needs to be a good guy and somebody that you're willing to stand behind as a manufacturer, not somebody that you get called out to their jobs all the time to go help them with technical support because they're doing things they don't know how to do without any training or certification or anything like that. I don't care that they're buying your products. They need to be representing your products really well. So by doing that, I take myself out of the contractor submission role.
Okay.
And I will tell you that like there's guys in the program that I'm working in right now that, I personally don't really like. For whatever reason over the years, maybe there's something happened that I don't know that they're a guy that would be great for that program. But if I'm being true to the program and true to the plan, I'm not going to tell a retailer, no, you shouldn't submit that guy, because that's the whole point is that I don't have an input there. And then when you present it that way to the owner and you say, listen, I need you to take all that control away from your people. Here's how we're going to do it. Here's a list. Every job will get at least 3 or 4 guys looking at it. Every job, no matter where it's at in the country, you'll have at least 3 guys looking at it. We're going to really dial it in, take away all that free choice for 1 year. Let's get it going. Let's get some control. I want to show you what it should look like. And by the end of that year, depending on how the program's going, if it's going really well, then we'll triple the stores for the following year. Well, now when I triple the stores, now I can open up that contractor base some more and let smaller guys or different guys come in. But until then, one of the things that's hard is I'll get a call. I'll get calls all the time. I get calls every day from contractors who know me or worked with me on prior projects or whatever. And they're like, hey, how do I get in this spec? How can I get into these projects or whatever? I'm like, well, Call your manufacturer. Who's your best manufacturer?
And then say, you got to be their guy.
You got to be their guy.
And that manufacturer's got to decide who is the best horse to take to the race, because they want to be successful too.
Right. But the way that, so the manufacturers sometimes, it's a struggle for them, because they may have 10 contractors that they would like to put in, but they know they can only put in one. So then the only other caveat that I'll like my next level down, if the manufacturer comes back and they say, well, we just can't choose, we don't know who to submit. I'll say, well, I only have 2 guys on the West Coast. So why don't, if one of the guys that you like can service that territory pretty well, then why don't you use that guy? Because it would fill the program better. And they all understand, and this is pretty much the way it is in our industry. If a bunch of jobs go well, that owner's locked in for years. They will switch everything to polished concrete, because especially big corporations, they set it and forget it. Create the system, turn it loose, and I don't want to think about it anymore, because for the entire time I'm in this position as director of construction or whatever, that decision's made.
And it's never made a price. It's never given me a headache.
Yeah. So I don't want to mess with it. So we're just going to roll. So if the program goes really well, those manufacturers all know, and we talk about it. I talk about it with them, that they're going to triple the stores. So it's okay to pick the guy, even though you have more guys that you want to put in, because next year with triple the stores, maybe I give you 3 submissions. Maybe I give you 5 submissions. Maybe I tell you regionally where I want some guys. But the challenge as a consultant is to try to pull my personal feelings or my personal beliefs out of the selection process.
Yeah.
Very difficult. It's hard for me on products. It's hard for me on equipment. It's hard for me on a lot of things, because as a contractor, I had my own favorites too. And there's certain people that I know that I feel like do a better job at servicing, and there's certain products that I think work better than other products. But I've got to try to, pull myself back from that and look at,
which keeps you legit. I mean, that makes sure that you're running a program that's reproducible, that can get everywhere, that can get consistent results. And consistent doesn't always mean that store is going to be the best that store could ever be. It means it's going to be within the range of what it was supposed to be.
Yeah, it's design intent. That it's close enough to the design intent that if a regional sales director walks into that store on a given Tuesday and goes 2 states away on Thursday to look at another store, they're going to look somewhat similar. And as long as they look somewhat similar and they have the same maintenance costs, everything that I build is all, this is one thing that I think our industry lacks, is from specifications, from the design and specs to build for maintenance.
Yeah. Yeah, they don't do that.
So everything that we design for my consulting firm is all built for the back end maintenance, always. So that means that, like as things come in the industry, like for example, some of the new meters, the testing equipment that we get come into the industry, I don't include any of that. Well, why? Because it only has an application at the time of construction. It doesn't have an application in maintenance. If I can't tie it into a maintenance program, then it's worthless to the owner. Well, why am I going to put a burden on a contractor that's worthless to the owner? So I'm not going to take it in. Never going to enter in the program. And I've gone into some really big programs and yanked out, DOI requirements and stuff like that, because I can't tie it into a maintenance contract.
That's an interesting thought. I had never thought of it that way.
So it may help you as a contractor at that time, but
it's a useful tool to me, but that doesn't mean it needs to be a part of the program.
Yeah. It's like old testing the timing ratios on engines for an everyday driver.
That didn't matter.
Yeah.
They didn't miss them.
What is that? How does that help your wife?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. She needs to, are my tires at about the right level? And what's my mileage per gallon? Do I have gas in the car?
Do I have a light on in the dash that wasn't on yesterday?
That's right. And so if you can't tie it into the maintenance, then don't put the meter there on the dash that she doesn't understand, nor does it matter to her, and she can't use it even if she has the information.
It is funny. It's the opposite side of, I got a floor that I love. It looks fantastic, but my gloss isn't what the thing says.
Mm-hmm.
Do you like the floor? Does it look good? Does it look like what you wanted? Yeah. Well, then move on.
Well, so
they should correlate. But
even with that, you set parameters, right? When I'm designing a program for maintenance, you set, okay, here's your expectation. A lot of times I'll do a visual and then tie that back to a gloss reading, for example, rather than put in a gloss reading and let them determine the visual. I'll say, okay, do you want to, you're a university. Okay. Do you want to look down at your feet and see the ceiling above? College boys, not a great idea.
We've had
so let's lower that gloss out. Let's move it out to 10 or 12 feet in front of you. Okay. So now the clear reflection of the ceiling above is 10 feet in front of you. You like that? Looks overall good. Here's your cleaning cost. Even understanding something we'll add to the podcast that'll be good for everybody to understand from a contractor standpoint. Every owner is different because, well, most owners have all their money into one of two budgets. Either they want to spend money in a capital expenditure budget where they spend the money once every 5 years or once every 10 years on a store, and then they depreciate that larger expense, or they want to spend the money every day and maintain, and they'll spend more on maintenance, but they don't want the capital expenditure.
Yeah.
So I'll give you two big retailer examples. What is that?
They shouldn't be doing it. I think it's an alert.
So, what's the chain out of Rochester, New York?
Wegmans.
Wegmans they don't want capital expenditure money. They want daily money. So the maintenance on their floors will be 15 cents per foot per year higher than, say, Kroger or Walmart, because they want to maintain a higher appearance level and they don't depreciate their capital expenditure budget. Where another chain like a Kroger's or a Walmart, for example, they'll come in and want to do a refurbish every 10 years, and then they'll spend a bunch of money on the refurbish, and then they'll charge that to a capital expenditure budget that stretches out over time. Well, that decision should control the polishing process that you do.
Yeah, you either got to make it last now or last over time.
Yeah. So I'll give you some examples. If you're going to do a capital expenditure where you refurb it, you should run 100s, 200s, 400s, 800s, 1500s. Boom, boom, boom. Very cleanly, very clearly, making sure that everyone is just right. If you're spending more money on the daily, like with a daily maintenance, a better daily maintenance program, you can run 1s to 4s or some version of a hybrid. Transitional, go 150 metals or 80 metals, run a transitional, then 400s, because you don't need to keep the scratch pattern just right, because the owner is basically going to be doing the work that you're doing that you would normally do at construction. He'll be doing that every night when he's scrubbing his floors.
Yeah.
So he'll have a higher cost of maintenance daily, but his floors will look as good or better 10 years out than they did the day you left.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's an interesting idea.
You can modify the process and therefore the cost depending on where they want their money. So if you don't know that going in and you throw out a one size fits all situation, you can lose jobs or even lose customers. Because
so how does a contractor even find out that?
Ask the question. You
simply ask the owner.
Yeah, literally ask the question. Hey, would you rather, how do you guys operate? Because whatever they're doing for the floor is also what they're doing. I'm going to use grocery as an example, is also what they're doing for their coolers. It's also what they're doing for their lighting. It's also what they're doing for their parking lot. They're doing the same thing.
Interesting.
Guy wants a forever parking lot. It's concrete. Guy wants to put in capital expenditure, refurb every 10 years. It's asphalt.
Man,
it's clear as day on how they operate their business, but you can just ask them the question, because every construction guy will know that answer, because that's what he has to deal with every day.
Because those are the choices he's making when he's selecting the product as well.
He'll buy a lower quality light fixture, knowing that it will only last about 12 years, but he knows that in 10 years, they're going to do a complete refurbish.
Remodel the whole thing anyway.
Yeah. And they don't want to pay the extra money. and a guy that wants it to last forever. Those are the stores you go into that have still got the light fixtures from the early 90s that are rocking and still look good and are, you can't tell any difference. And they're 40 years old.
Yeah.
Because they paid double the amount of money for the fixture to begin with, because they don't want the capital expenditure blowout every 10 years. So you can ask the question.
So what do you tell? So when you tell contractors, they're like, most of the people, like, how do you control subcontractors to these guys? Like, okay, you're going to give it to, ABC polishing, and they can handle 5 jobs in 5 states and stuff like that. But their crews are subcontractors to them. Does that change the dynamic of what you're doing? Or is it just who's responsible?
For most of the programs, well, I mean, so that's a sliding scale depending on the customer and the job type. So if you have 70,000 square foot or larger stores, in that first year, they can't sub any work out. It has to all be completed in-house. And if you don't have enough guys and enough crews to manage that, you can't be in that program that first year.
And why does in-house versus subcontract? Does it always correlate to quality?
Not always, but it has a much, much higher likelihood of quality differential. So I'll give you 2 project examples from the last month or so. One, you have, and this is these are both projects that I came in late in the job. I wasn't involved in the beginning. So one of them has a company that doesn't actually do any work. They just subcontract down, but they sell a lot of work in our industry. They have a subcontractor for the polishing who has a subcontractor for the repairs, who has a subcontractor for the joints. So the polishing is actually pretty well done, but the repairs are just crap. Not even close to spec. Nothing's right. I mean, it's bad. Well, the GC only has a contract with the guy that's the top guy.
Yeah.
That guy has a contract with the polishing guy. That guy has a contract with the repair guy. The repair guy has a contract with the joint guy. The joints are okay, not great. A bunch of punch list stuff on the joints. The repairs are crap. Like the whole store has to be redone. But the polisher can't force the repair guy to go redo it. And he's already been paid out 60% of his job because he's been submitting his pay apps based on the polishing percentages. So now that guy's like, I'm not going back to fix anything. You can keep the rest of the contract. I'm done. Well, now what does that do for the owner?
Yeah, now you're stuck.
It's a bad spot, right? So especially in the beginning phases of the evolution of a retailer, by saying everything has to be in-house, multiple things happen. Number one, you have one person responsible. And I know you can make an argument, oh, well, subcontracting, you're responsible too. But at the end of the day, that's a hard thing to enforce in reality on a job. So having one person responsible is a big deal. And number two, if I have that contractor in-house, if they have to do everything in-house and they're a decent size group, then that contractor will end up doing more than 10 stores, let's say. Well, if you do, let's say you're a $20 million a year contractor and you have one retailer that this year is providing $4 million worth of your work. Well, are you willing to roll the dice on the next $500,000 job that you're not going to get that job, or that customer is going to get pissed when you've got 20% of your revenue for the year on the line with that customer?
Yeah, you're going to show.
You're going to show, and you're going to make it right. And if your guys mess something up, because it happens regularly,
everybody,
you're going to show up and fix it. You're not going to try to push it off on a sub who may or may not do it, or maybe try to push it off onto another layer sub. So especially at the beginning, I can't let those guys in.
Because it doesn't always correlate, but it correlates enough.
It correlates enough that it's not worth the risk.
Yeah. When you're filtering, you got to have something to filter about.
Yeah. Because if let's say that in the beginning of a program, especially, let's say that the upper management is looking at the first 20 jobs under a microscope. Well, if 4 or 5 of those go south, those are the ones that they'll remember. They won't remember the 15 that went well. They'll remember the 5 that went bad.
And they can shut a whole program.
That'll shut the whole program down. And I've watched it happen 5 times. I watch people abandon big retailers abandon polished concrete because they couldn't get it right, consistent enough.
Yeah, that was one of the things we used to say, that the only thing growing faster than polished concrete as a flooring surface was dissatisfaction with polished concrete as a flooring surface.
Yeah, that's right.
And it does. It's frustrating that it can be done well, and but it just takes coordination. We run into lots and lots of jobs where we are not contacted. I mean, we're bought out when they're buying out carpet.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, it's got cure and seal, it's got this, it's got enhanced storage, it didn't pour the same concrete, some was covered, some was not.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just like, well, it's frustrating. And you can say, you can write all the caveats and make sure they understand that it's not something that you did. But all that owner knows is, I don't like polished concrete.
Yeah. They didn't see all the pieces in the back end.
Yeah.
So that's a great spot for me to come in as a consultant.
Yeah.
Even on the one-off job, because I'll come in as the owner's rep, and then being a guy who wore a contractor's hat, especially at the beginning of a new industry, way more often than not, the owner, through the architect, through the GC to you, feels like, oh, he's just trying to blow smoke. He's telling me a lie. He's just trying to get more money, or he's trying to get out of that extra work, because they've been taken advantage of so many times. And so as a consultant for the owner, now I come in, I don't have a dog in the fight. I don't care whether you're going to get paid or not. I don't care whether you're doing your work right or not. I mean,
you got your check at the airport.
Sometimes, yeah. But more importantly, I'm looking at the specifications and what was contracted, and then say, are you providing what was contracted? And I will tell you that there's actually a decent number of times where the owner's dissatisfied with the floor result will call me as a consultant. I'll show up, I'll look at the specs and say, yeah, what's provided doesn't match the specs. And then we'll go to the next layer and say, Mr. GC, you have the specs in your contract. Let me see the contract that you've got with your polisher. And the polisher's contract with the GC is for half the process of what the specs call for.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what happened there? Oh, well, the GC called me and said that he wanted me to value engineer it. So he asked me what I could do to take out that would lower the price down to this level. Oh, so the GC went against the specs. Okay, Mr. Owner, here's what's gone on. And a lot of times it's actually my relationships with both manufacturers and so many contractors. I can't tell you how many times it saved the contractor or saved the manufacturer and helped the owner too, because that delta there is, a lot of times it's people that don't understand polished concrete will go, oh, well, you've got, I'm just going to use a round number. You've got a $5 a foot floor, and I bought this job out and I bid the polishing without actually having a contractor. And I only put $3 a foot in for the polishing. So therefore I need to get polishing done for $3. Well, the specs, require a lot more work. So that's a $5 spec that you're going to get done for $3.
Oh,
Well, you have two options. Go with a cheap contractor who has no idea what they're going to get into, and they're going to hurt themselves. They're going to shoot their own foot off and lose massive amounts of money on the job to try to meet the specs. Or you get a contractor that knows what they're doing, but you revise their process down to get to a dollar point that the job was bid out for.
Yeah, it is funny. We get bids and they're like, exact same thing. It's 5. We only have 3 in it. All right. What do you want to do? Can you do it for 3? I can't do what you want me to do for 3. I can tell you what I can do for 3, and I can tell you what I can do for 5.
Uh-huh.
And with a little bit of math, I can tell you how far apart they are.
Right. And so you answer that question to your GC as a contractor.
Yeah.
Well, do you think that answer goes from the GC to the architect and the architect to the owner?
Oh, I'm sure it does.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, it's like
so when I show up on site, I know what I'm looking at. Oh, you called for an exposed aggregate finish up to a 1500 with a penetrating stain protect and X number of repairs on the, whatever. And I showed them, look at the job, and it's a sand aggregate exposure with a 4 or 5 step polish system with a topical guard product, and all the repairs are left, as they were. So you got underlayment or self-leveling compound or whatever, filling all the little chips and stuff. And I'm like, well, that doesn't match anything in the specs.
Yeah.
But the owner doesn't even know enough to ask that question. They just know they don't like it.
And sometimes contractors don't know.
Uh-huh.
They want the job, and I think that's a lot of times. We talked about the people that pride themselves on changing a spec, but sometimes the spec is incorrect. Sometimes you run into a bad spec. Sometimes that spec is there to protect you and to protect the job, so that you know that everybody's bidding the same thing. And I think that's one thing that we started doing as Concrete, was making sure that our bid said exactly what we were going to do and what was in the spec. So then you can say, here's everything that's in the spec. Here's what I agree or disagree with. Here's the dollar figure associated with those, but never let the two be confused. It's like, if you want to do this, that's fine, but that you will be different than what your specification is.
Well, so as a owner's rep consultant, I will tell you that probably one of the biggest mistakes that I see contractors make is they don't do things like turn in submittals, and they'll do lump sum bids. They'll just put out a price. And it doesn't have all the breakout. And then they don't turn in their product submittals either. So then they get no protection coverage on the back end. They get nobody that signed off on them using, a densifier that they put down 2,000 square feet a gallon versus a densifier that goes 300, 400 square feet a gallon. Nobody signs off on that. Nobody signs off on a joint fill that only comes in 3 colors.
Yeah, it's like, now I want a custom color.
Now the owner says, well, why do my joints all stand out? I thought the spec says it's going to be a close match to the concrete. Well, if they turned in a submittal, the architect, at a minimum, they would have an architect that signed off that said, yeah, that product will work fine. And then they say, well, we submitted it and your rep approved it. It's fine if you want me to change it, but I'm going to have to charge you again to change it. And I'll change it to whatever you want, but without ever turning in the submittals, or, I see it on weekly, the guys don't turn in they don't even record for themselves, like logs or things like that, about what's going on a job. And they basically, they commit murder with no witnesses to protect themselves.
Yeah.
So then at the end of the job, they're left holding the bag, because they have no backup whatsoever and nobody to support them, because they didn't even know that enough to support themselves.
And it is that the smaller you are, I think the more susceptible that is to happen, because that's one of the things that you get into, is you're so busy fighting the fire that you don't see what's happening around you. And what you think is structure and frustration and stuff like that is really the protection and the guarantees around your work. I think contractors sometimes also feel like, hey, if I do all of that, I'll never get the job. And maybe that's a job you don't want. But
I would wager, I will tell you that programs that I run, guys tend to make great margin. They stick with the specs, and I will force, my team will force you to stay to the specs. But if you stay to those specs and you bid the job properly, and I promise you won't bid more than one wrong, but if you bid the job properly, you're going to make pretty good money.
You'll make good money, and they get the floor they ask for.
That's right.
It doesn't mean you're making good money. Doesn't mean that the owner paid more for it either.
No, the specs are there to set the owner's expectation, the architect's limitations, the GC's requirements, and the contractor's requirements, as much as anything else. Those are the 4 kind of pillars that I build a spec on. Is, you start with, what does the owner want? What is the polisher or decorative contractor going to provide? Okay. What can the polisher or decorative contractor not provide? That's what the GC needs to provide. Okay. Mr. Owner wants this. How's the architect? And I would put our services kind of in the middle of that. How does the architect or the consultant manage the quality to achieve that owner's expectation? And that delta, that line right there at the bottom, that's the line that the spec is written for. So if you don't follow the spec, you're somewhere in Never Never Land. And if the spec doesn't clearly outline the owner's expectations, you're also in Never Never Land.
Yeah, that's when you're stuck to the polish until the architect likes it.
That's right.
You're like, no, I can't.
And it's hard to get out of that situation once you're in it, because then you get the GC threats. Oh, we're going to, I'm going to file against your bond. We're going to sue you. I'm holding $100,000 of your money. I'm not going to turn loose any of it. I'll see you in court in 5 years, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's miserable.
Brutal. Yeah. But to kind of tie back in a little bit with conversation we had earlier, that rapid growth to 40+% of the hard surface flooring market, lots of people that have no affinity for or business being in the decorative concrete industry try to get into the decorative concrete industry because they see their market share in other flooring types disappearing. So they try to get into it. And a lot of times they don't get into it the right way. And then in order to win work, they try to commoditize it like carpet or VCT or whatever. And they drive the price down, which gets them more work, but also loses the entire program or pisses people off where they don't ever do polish again. And they carry that into their next job and the next job and the next job. And the GC is soured on it too, but they won that job at $1.20 a foot.
Yeah, that they're not making money doing the work if they're doing it correctly.
They're not doing it per specs, but so that it's kind of like a toilet bowl drain.
Yeah,
it just takes everything down. And I feel like that our industry right now is kind of on a rebound cycle of that, where for years we were in the, race to the bottom. How cheap can we get it? Right. And I feel like that the quality, a lot of good GCs and good retailers and bigger projects, they're putting more emphasis. They understand that paying an extra $2 a foot on the front end, if they're saving 30 cents per foot per year on the maintenance side, and they get something that they like versus something they don't like to begin with, the value's not there to fight it. So let's do it the right way.
So in the end, it comes around the same thing that you always hear in business.
Pay now or pay later.
Give a good quality product, add value to your customer, and you will be fine.
Well, I feel like that in my travels, I feel like our industry, and tell me what you see, used to be you'd have 20% of the contractors where you'd say they're big guys. And, a long time ago, big guy was 20 machines or more.
Yeah.
Now a big guy, maybe 150 machines or more.
They're big.
They're big. Yeah, they're big guys. And for 2 decades, we had middle of the road guys that were let's say 5 to 15 machines, middle class contractors. And then anything, below 5 machines or 5 machines there, but only do small jobs, small guys. I feel like that whole middle class is disappearing.
Yeah, I think they've either been bought up, run out, or they're the sub to the big guy now. And the big guy has 150, 250 machines.
And he's got work for 400
under their umbrella. And
I see guys that have 150 machines and work for 300.
Yeah, that's true.
So they'll bring in.
There's no choice but to sub it.
Yeah, they'll sub it out because they can't train guys fast enough. They can't train guys fast enough to do the work that they get under contract.
Yeah,
I see that.
It's crazy.
And so then those guys end up very quickly, unfortunately, if they've got good crew guys, the big guy will buy that crew. Hey, you guys are doing a great job. Can I give you $5 more an hour for everybody across the crew for you to come work for us instead? Sure. I'm doing the exact same job for $5 more an hour.
Yeah. How can I not?
How do you not? Yeah. And then the smaller guy can't afford that. The bigger guy can, because he's got, 150, 200 jobs to do. Yeah. So, and he's not paying the markup. Basically, he's just taking 1/3 of the markup that he's paying to the subcontractor and giving that to the crew guys, and now taking the entire crew away from the middle size guy.
Yeah. It's a tough spot to be in. So in that middle range.
Yeah.
And, but it's, it happens in every industry, in every trade, and you go through cycles of it. And then, you'll get to a point where all of a sudden, right now there's more work than can get done. Soon, or maybe soon, there'll be a time when there's less work to do than you've got people for.
Yeah.
And you'll see that they'll wax and wane. And in both cases, there's opportunity.
I see small guys that want to get big and big guys that shrink down to get small. They get burnout I'm running, 300 employees, And they go, life was so much simpler when I had 10 employees.
That's what they say was the best way to own a small business is to buy a big one and wait.
That's right. Yeah. And I see that cyclically happening. But so my challenge, one of the challenges that I have taken on, I don't know, whether it'll be successful or not, we'll see, is try to figure out how to take all of my experience and put it out in a way that helps more people. So I think that's kind of what you're doing a little bit with your podcast.
Same kind of idea, trying to answer the questions up front, because every question I can answer for you before we start is a warning,
right?
And is knowledge and experience. Once we start the job, everything after that is just going to be seen as an excuse.
Yep.
And
well,
so
that's
the more,
kind of what I was saying.
The more you can get out ahead of that, and the more satisfaction there is with the product, then in the end, it's better for everyone. And you're going to bring along some people that maybe shouldn't be brought along, and there's some people that you might miss. But overall, bringing the whole industry up is a better way to go.
So I thought, well, what happens if I die? Kind of getting to that age where you start to just think about that a little bit, right? So, I told you I manage stuff from birth to death, right? Well, through that, and I don't know if you know this, I'm high functioning autistic.
No, I did not know.
Yeah. So I have a
lot of good consultants are.
Well, I have what's called an eidetic memory. So I have a really, really good memory, and I have a lot of capacity, and I also sleep like 3 hours a night.
Oh my gosh.
So, I have all this trapped knowledge in here from going all the way back, some tricks from before we had manufacturers to support us, when we were using stone diamonds from Europe.
Oh yeah.
Way back.
Yeah,
way back in the day. Right. And, tricks that we figure out, plus all the experience as a contractor and then as a manufacturer, and all the tech stuff that you get into as we invented dye and sprayers and put that out into the world, and then everybody calling with all their issues and problems, and you're trying to diagnose and figure out stuff and flying all over the place to go see stuff. And then as a consultant, going into the problems.
Yeah.
Well, all that knowledge is all stuck here, right? And I told you I'm on site training a crew, telling them the same things that I told them years ago. Right. So I thought, okay, well, how can I get that out? I started a few years ago with down like in associations and trying to, push some of my knowledge into associations. And that has had some success for me, but, it's not near as fast as I would like it to be. Also, it takes a lot of time to do that, go that route. Oh, yeah. So I started about 2 years ago. I just started sitting down and recording video. So I started Expert Concrete Training website, where I've got about 90 hours of video up right now. Every article that I've written around the world for decades. And I've got all these videos broken into like 15 to 20 minute little shots, along with a bunch of little, 5-minute videos addressing a specific issue. And I've got it set up so that, the idea was I put myself back in contractor mode. All right. So I got a guy on a job. It's 2 a.m. He pops tile, finds something he's never seen before.
How can
I help that guy? Yeah. He doesn't have the answer. He can't call the owner because it's 2 a.m. Right? He doesn't want to admit half the time that he doesn't know the answer. He doesn't want to tell the GC he doesn't know the answer. And he's only got so much room on his credit card because the owner can't give an unlimited credit line to a crew foreman that works overnight, right? So I've got it set so you can get like I think it's 5 videos for 2 days for $400 or something like that.
Yeah.
So he can jump on there and go, okay, well, this is how I address that issue. Oh, we have that issue going on over there. Let me watch that video too, and let me show these 2 guys these other 2 videos so they can learn, elevate them, right? So you have a couple of things like that, small like per video things, and then I thought, okay, now let me put, let's pretend I'm a GC or a bigger contractor. Now I want to, like, I actually, like, our whole in our industry is training. right? Because we can't get guys trained fast enough because
Yeah,
they're getting trained on site is a very slow process, and literally like closing your eyes and throwing a dart. Because if you hit 5 good jobs in a row where the concrete's in good shape and they're
You're
all
gonna
new
leave it alone.
construction,
Yeah, you're like, oh, the guy didn't learn anything.
yeah, you go to the 6th job, he's 5 jobs in. You might have promoted him to foreman by now because he's been working for you for 2 years
Yeah.
on 5 big jobs, and he's made good money on all of them and helped really well. So you promote him, and then you put him on an old remodel job, and you as the owner, tell me you're not thinking this.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, well, he's been here for a couple of years. I'm sure he knows what to do.
Yeah. How can you not know?
Right. And so I thought, okay, well, can I use this same platform as a training where you set it up like you as a company go, I've got 20 guys and I want to elevate them. We need to make higher margin. I don't want to have the, 1.5 jobs out of 10 that lose money. And I don't want to have the 2 jobs out of 10 that break even, so that I make money on, 6.5 jobs. I want to make money on 9 or 9.5 out of 10 jobs, right? Because you're going to end up, something weird's going to happen sometimes, no matter how hard you try. But so set it up so you can do like a monthly recurring and get access to like everything. Well, then I can give you, I'm using you as the example here.
That's right.
You can say, okay, on my foreman, you have to watch 4 videos a month. And I can give you your analytics page at the end of each month telling you who watched, how long they watched, and what videos they chose. And you can look at it and go, okay, well, he's learning about joints. Well, joints done right are good money. Joints done wrong, you can lose money really fast.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he's learning how to deal with edges against block wall. Oh, we have a school that they didn't call me until the end of the project, and they put the block up before they poured the concrete, and they got crappy hand finished edges along here. Well, I see this foreman watched a video on that last month. I'm going to send him to that job versus this foreman who I don't know whether he knows how to do that or not.
That's a good idea.
And using that as a training tool where companies can do more consistent training across all the crews using outsourced video that they can watch on their phone. 15-20 minute shots.
So what's that website? It's
expertconcretetraining.com.
So
it's got design stuff for architects, GC. This is how you run a job. Here's how you buy it out. Like when you bring it on, here's your scheduling stuff. This is, you're pouring concrete on Tuesday. Here's when you can polish. If you're doing exposed aggregate, you can do here. Here's what you need to do. Here's how you handle your lifts. Here's how you handle your chemical spills, all of this kind of stuff. Concrete place and finish. Okay, here's how you take without needing a laser streak. Here's how you get a high floor flatness floor. No, you don't need to burn it. Here's where you need to stop. That's great for the polishing. This is better for polishing than what you've been doing. Here's the right curing compounds to use versus the wrong curing compounds. Here's your mix design breakdown. Oh, your recycled material is too high. Your water cement ratio is off. Talking about that, teaching the concrete guys. Then polishers, tons of stuff for polishers and sealing, sealants, and understanding why does epoxy blush. How to understand the difference between sodium efflorescence and potassium or calcium efflorescence. What do they do to a floor? How do you treat them both? Stuff like that. And then maintenance contractors.
Consultant in your pocket.
That's basically what it is. And so I've been working on that for a couple of years, and it's about to go live. The site's up, I think last week, but we're like literally just pushing it out into the world. And every week I record video about everything that I ran into that week.
Yeah, that's a good way to build a library.
Yeah, because every day I'm on something.
Steadfast looking at stuff.
Yeah. Either fixing something or planning something or helping a contractor, or helping a manufacturer, or looking at R&D stuff for a manufacturer or product types or whatever.
God, man, I'm going to have to check that out. I'm excited to see that.
Well,
I'm going to run up against a window. I got to bump up into, have a interview, because just like you, I'm trying to find people. So I've got an interview this afternoon. Hopefully that's going to go well and we can hire some more people.
Well, is there anything that, that we actually sat down with no plan for this?
Yeah.
Right.
But man, it seemed to have had somewhat of a flow to it. I think it went well.
And this is how they always go.
That's right.
We just flow. It just goes. Is there anything specific that you want to, like for your side, that you would like to ask or include?
No, I'm good. I think a lot of it is the same idea. The focus of the podcast is we're using a method called they ask you answer. We're trying to answer all the questions preemptively to limit our time. It's an efficiency thing. And it's like the more educated my customer is, the more likely they are to pick me. I think I'm a good choice. And so when you have all the right information, I think that's becomes more evident. So for us, that's really good. And it saves us from a lot of heartache. Worst job you can take is the one that they shouldn't have had. And so no, I like that. So your concrete expert training is right in line with what we're trying to do too, which I think is great. I wish.
What time is your
Supposedly at 3:30, but let me double check and see.
Well, if we have another minute, I'd like to kind of talk about current stuff going on in the country and how it will affect our industry. I think that would be
actually high value. Yeah, it's at 4, and that'll give me time to prep. So yeah, cool. So we got plenty of time.
So, there's a lot of stuff going on in our country right now. You said,
oh yeah,
political in your neighborhood. I think politics has kind of unfortunately entered into every facet of our life.
Every part.
What are the things that you see? Let's maybe just focus on economics and energy that will affect our industry.
So I think economics, right now wages and material costs, of course, are way up. Which is unfortunate, because if wages were up and people were able to do more with their money, that'd be fantastic. Right now, wages are up and everything's more expensive. So it's really just everybody's right where they were or worse off.
Yeah.
And that's tough.
5% increase, 10% increase in cost. 5% wage increase, 10% increase in cost.
It's a great time to build a house. But it's I was at a conference for EO and last week. And I think the best answer I heard was everybody's talking about the economy and the political situation and everything all the way around. And they got to this one guy who was very successful. And they said, "So what are you going to do?" He goes, "I choose not to participate."
Okay.
There's nothing I can do about it right now. The best thing I can do is run my company the best that I can, and keep in mind that there's opportunity in everything, on the way up, on the way down, on the way around. There's opportunity everywhere. And the only way it's going to get fixed is if people stop focusing on the problem and start working towards a solution. So I like his answer for that. I think that is one of the things. Try not to get bogged down in the whole idea of, what is it, what is the, what the big concern for everybody is, but it's more about, okay, what am I going to do locally, within my company, within my people, within my region, that kind of thing, that's going to make things better for the people that are around me. If everybody focused locally, that would change the world, because everybody would be, it's us reaching out and trying to solve problems halfway around the world or all the way around the world. Or what's worst of all is when people say, "Nothing I do matters, I can't fix that." So they use it as an excuse for a crutch to not do anything. But it's, drops add up. If you don't believe that, get a leak in your house one day. You'll see a dripping leak will ruin a whole structure.
Right.
And I think that's what people do, is they use that as an excuse to not do anything. And that bothers me. But energy wise, it's good.
Let me have a comment on the economy piece and then switch over to energy.
For sure.
A couple of things. I see a section of our industry that is way behind, that I'm afraid for a lot of our contractors coming up. Like it's already hit us, and a lot of people don't even realize it. And actually, the person who's put the most time into this that I've talked to about it is actually David Paget, owner of CPS, Concrete Polishing Solutions. And that's where our industry lags, is repricing. So when you get a job, let's say you bid a school or a hospital or a big retail facility, whatever, and you bid it this month, and you win the job next month or the month after is when they finally award it to you. And then they're going to start dirt work. And that project is not, you don't actually, you as the polisher don't step on that job for 6 months to a year. Well, your wage rates will have gone up 10% in that time, but we don't ever go back and readjust the contract value.
Well, you'd have to have the ability to readjust it in your contract.
But literally, I talk to contractors all over the country every day. Nobody's doing that. Nobody sees it. And they get focused on the concrete and forget about that ancillary cost. And in fact, most of the bids that we put out, for anybody listening, most of the bids that you put out, and I read a lot of people's bids after the job's awarded. That's one thing I won't do, is read a bid before the job's awarded, but I read a lot of them afterwards. They don't even put a provision in there for an option. And the GCs intentionally leave out the provision for you to readjust due to wage increases in commercial contracts. It's not even in there. And I work with some of the biggest GCs in the country, and they intentionally do that. And so I think that that's a section of our industry that where I think a lot of guys are going to get hit over the next couple of years. Job that's bid today that starts in 2023 for their work, or 2024 for their work, don't change the price. So I think that if I could tell contractors, that would be one thing that I would really focus on, is making a provision in your bid and making sure that it's an addendum into your contract, that if the wage rates increase, that you can readjust your price based on those wage rates.
Yeah. And I think it's a big part of an even bigger issue, which is the number of contractors that don't read their contracts or try to negotiate them. I don't know how many times you call a general contractor and say, I can't change anything, it's boilerplate. Yeah, that's just not true.
One of the options on expert concrete training for you, if you sign up like for the monthly, is you can send me all your contracts and I'll review them all.
Yeah.
I personally may not. I have somebody dedicated to do that.
There's somebody who gets up every morning, lives and breathes the review,
just tears apart contracts and finds the holes or the traps, because a lot of times they're not where you think they are.
No. And they're typically in the same places. And there's things, I mean, Virginia starting in 2023, Virginia will no longer honor pay when paid. You cannot have a pay when paid contract anymore, or pay if paid.
Yeah.
And people don't realize, one, that there's a difference between pay when paid and paid if paid. And two, that it doesn't matter. So you'll be doing work in Virginia for a Virginia contractor, and you'll look at the contract, and the law and the contract will say, this is going to be adjudicated in, Utah,
Nebraska,
like or type pay.
Yeah.
If you want to, if you want to go this, you got to fly around the country.
I legitimately saw a contract the other day with an American GC with all American contractors that arbitration and legal is handled in Singapore. I'm not joking. I read that in a contract. I was like, you got to be kidding me. And that's exactly the point they're trying to get out of the laws. The other thing I was going to say is a lot of, and this is probably more for a little bit more mature contractors than new guys coming in, is think about your project load. If the economy goes down, which we've watched it, what we're going into now will be my third cycle, of a pretty sizable drop in work, right? Think about your customer load. If you have a customer, I'm going to pick somebody, let's say a movie theater chain. Okay. Well, if the economy drops and the stock market drops and people, inflation continues to happen, people don't have a lot of, free cash. So where are they going to cut first? Well, entertainment. Okay. So if you have a big customer or multiple projects for a customer that's in an industry, restaurant chains, movie theaters, entertainment, you need to be thoughtful about that, because I've seen guys build their whole business. I've got 200 stores. And then in a period of 3 months, they go from, I got 200 stores under contract to, I don't have a store under contract. And now I don't have any work because I haven't spent my time marketing anywhere else, because I was so covered up with these guys that I couldn't see straight. So I didn't try to find another type of customer. Now I'm stuck.
Yeah. How many people tooled up to do nothing but Amazons?
And
then now Amazon's like we're just going to stop for a bit.
Yeah, they're shutting projects down that are already under construction. They're just pausing them.
Mm-hmm.
And so, think about I don't know whether you call it recession proof, but think about the types of businesses that will do well in that, like grocery stores, government, things that are stable, schools,
barbershops.
Yeah. Well, the barber doesn't spend as much money.
Yeah, it's been a bunch of polished concrete.
But I will tell you that, like I do a lot of work for the Department of Defense. Most of the DoD groups have got a lot of cash sitting for construction, waiting for the prices to go down to spend money. Well, if you wait until they start rocking, you're not into the program early enough. Now there's a whole nother set of contractors that are going to benefit from that money that's sitting there, that's waiting for the economy to drop.
That's a great point.
So whether it's your county government, state government, federal government, those guys are going to have money to spend when all the retail economics go down. So that would be one thing. Another thing that I would say is area that we're way behind, that the economy this can help a contractor or not, is refurbishing. Maintenance in our industry has not been great. Janitorial is a whole nother industry that we haven't been able to, and I've tried my best, but haven't been able to get any control of. And so I'll write the program. I'll buy the soap for them. I showed up at a store 3 weeks ago, had 12 pallets full of polished concrete cleaner in the back of house, and they're using boric acid and alcohol to scrub their concrete floors, not using the soap that's delivered every month for them to use. So going out to, say, for example, schools, not hospitality, but healthcare facilities, things like that have been polished in the past, and going to talk to them now about refurbish, where you do a little bit at a time.
Mm-hmm.
Man, those guys are going to have money too,
because you're in the maintenance budget then.
Yeah, now you're in a reoccurring maintenance budget. Yep. And so that can save contractors. So those are 3 separate suggestions that I have based on the economy that you need to really think about if you're in the industry, of how to position yourself to make it through bad times.
Gosh, now I'm dying to hear how energy is in your mind.
Well, I'll let you go first. You already had thoughts in mind, so fire away.
Energy wise, I mean, I think the benefit of concrete floors is they are thermal batteries, and then you're looking at reduced lighting loads and with polished concrete typically. But you were seeing things like, propane cost is way up there.
Mm-hmm.
So making sure that you've got to price that out. You've got to have that in your jobs. You got to have you've got to have who's producing power for you to be working.
Uh-huh.
It seems minimal, but again, it's the whole idea. Drips turn into gallons.
Mm-hmm.
And so who's providing all that kind of stuff. One of the things that really got us in COVID was travel costs, because suddenly we were sending 3 trucks to a job that generally had 1. So fuel, because you had to spread people out.
Mm-hmm.
So fuel went through the roof. Our fuel expense, not necessarily the fuel cost, but our expense in fuel. So those are minor energy things, but I'm curious because I'm thinking you're going to see it on a macro level. I'm very curious about that.
Well, yeah, there's a few different things that I think about when it relates to energy. So first, in the vein of what you were talking about, if you're most big jobs today, and this will be the way of the future, will not let you run electric power in a big facility anymore. The cords, everybody's just going away from it.
It's too dangerous.
Well, it's not even just that. It's having to have somebody there to wire you into their circuits. It's the inconvenience to stocking processes or customer processes. It's getting everything laid out and then cleaning up everything behind you with cords dragging, and the amount of time that you lose off a project. So if you have an 8-hour close window and you spend an hour getting ready and an hour cleaning up on the back end, now you have 6 hours to work. Well, if you're running propane equipment, you've got 7.5 hours to work instead of 6 hours to work. Well, that extra hour and a half across 100,000 square foot store turns into a week or more worth of time.
Oh gosh, yeah.
It adds up exponentially quick. So if you're a guy that's transitioned or is transitioning to propane equipment, something I've been thinking about is every hole in the wall town in the United States has propane companies locally. Why are you going to fill propane tanks in random places? Why wouldn't you just get a big propane tank at your shop or your facility and have it filled one time at the price point that you can affect, and then fill your own propane tanks? You know how much a regulator costs to fill a propane tank off of a 500 gallon or 5,000 gallon tank? $123. That's how much you screw it in here that pressurizes your tanks. Now you fill your own propane tanks and you buy in bulk at a much cheaper price instead of paying the premium for every.
And here's a thought: don't overfill them.
Yeah,
they're frozen everywhere you go.
That's right. And so that's one thing that you got to think about. The fuel component. Like when I'm talking to guys, especially regional guys, man, you need to find places to park your vehicles. Go to your old customer list. Find your old customers that you've worked for and say, strategically position trailers or things like that around town. Because what's happening is, because of the politics, our government has been using the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to lower the price of gas and diesel to try to make it not hurt so bad prior to midterm elections. Okay.
Yep.
So like this week, we had a 7.6 million barrel drawdown of gasoline, and 6 million barrels were pumped back in at our Strategic Petroleum Reserve. So we only showed a 1.6 million barrel drawdown. That's going to turn off the day the elections are done, which means that your gas prices are probably going to double within 30 to 60 days post-election. Don't wait until that happens to think about how you're going to lower your fuel costs. Man, start looking at it now. Yeah. Think about I've got projects coming up that are all on the west side of town. Where can I rent the corner of a parking lot from a GC? Can I tell a GC, hey, I'll give you a little bit off of the next job I do for you if you'll let me park 2 trailers in your lot? Find ways to lower your gas. Something that I was actually talking to the Ford dealership, and that I saw that we as contractors, I never one time thought about this. On an F-250, which I drive, and I tested this out on a trip to Louisiana the other day. I've got the big mirrors, right? When I'm on the highway and I'm not going to be like getting off for 15 miles or something,
fold them in.
Do you know that if you fold those suckers in, that gives you 4 to 5 miles per gallon?
What?
Yes. I drove from Dallas to Shreveport, Louisiana the other day and got 5 miles more per gallon coming back with my mirrors in than I got going on the same roads on the way there.
Well, it's downhill.
No. It's just things like that. Little things, because they're going to add up. And when your fuel cost goes up to double what it is now, or even a 50% increase off of what it is now, back to the highs from a year ago or 9 months ago.
Oh, gotcha. And that goes to maintenance too. I mean, maintaining your equipment and stuff like that, because you can't get parts. You can't find storing and stocking parts.
So those are all the, say, post-contract things that you can think about. Try to find ways to be more efficient, right? You have a lot of opportunity to create profit in those things, because every trick that you do like that is $1 in your pocket, because the opportunity cost was already spent in the beginning. Now you're finding ways to just not let that money go out. So it's pure profit, right?
Oh, yeah.
On the other end, on the sales end, you need to know that VCT, okay, so if through political situations, we've stopped allowing companies to drill for oil, to explore, or even to pump the oil they've got. I know guys right now that are getting paid money to not pump their oil in Texas. They're getting paid money to not pump. That reduces the supply. The demand is not going to go down, or not down sizably enough to offset the supply loss. That the price of oil is going to go very high. And when you get things like, hey, we're we're pissing off Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
We're Ukraine, Russia, whatever, a war that we shouldn't be even involved in. Now I was at the Atlanta airport this morning. The airport got hacked by Russians yesterday, and massive backups in security today because the airports, all their systems are down. So we're involving in all this. All these things will affect the price of oil. The price of oil will go up. Well, guess what follows the price of oil? VCT, epoxy, urethanes, all your resins. So think about both the things that you can sell against, where, hey, metal bonds, diamonds, manufactured diamonds, they don't follow the price of oil. And metal doesn't follow the price of oil either. So we can sell polish at a much more effective rate against those oil-based byproduct floor types. We should have a competitive advantage.
Yeah, not because it's going down, because it's failing to go up.
That's right. And so their costs will go up, and the supply will get pulled for different uses, for gasoline, diesel, kerosene, aviation fuel, all that some of that might have gotten diverted into oil byproducts. Dang. Those oil byproducts disappear because the need is over here, because we reduce the supply so much that all the supply that's available is going over here. So now we have a competitive advantage going into the next 3 to 5 years against those flooring types. So you should seek them out. Go find them. Go find the school district that's been doing VCT since the 1950s and go show them what's happening.
Yeah. And
sell them.
Hey, man, we can do a little bit every year. Every summer we're going to come.
I had a great contract with a big school district that had 119 schools, and I had a blanket contract per foot every weekend, even evenings. If I wanted to go in there, evenings, weekends, and holidays, go in there, pop as much VCT as I could polish it, as long as it was available for the next day's use. It didn't have to be perfect. As long as it was available. 100 schools. Just worked it for years.
Good contract.
Yeah, because you can plug in around all kinds of stuff. Yeah. So you should have a competitive advantage against on that side. On the supply side, you've got to really think about, and I think this is a challenge to our manufacturers too. You got to think about the products that you're using. Think about how most contractors in our industry are very, let's just say, mind restricted. They hone in on a manufacturer. Hey, I like, this company's tooling, or I like this joint fill, or I like this repair product, or this bagged material, whatever. And they will, that loyalty is there. I get it, especially when you find people, because it's still a people-driven business. So you get a good sales guy for a manufacturer, his products seem like they match everybody else's. Where guys will get hurt is by putting those blinders on and focusing just on that one. So what I'm starting to ask for on all of our projects is, I want your submittals, and then I want your backup submittals. So I make you give me a densifier manufacturer that you're using densifier stain protect, and who you're going to use if they're out of product. Give me another guy.
That's a good idea.
Joint fill, give me another guy. Repair material, give me another one. Everything down the line. Diamond suppliers too. Okay, you like,
because they can't have you stop the job.
That's it. And through the last 2 years, what I've found, and I'm sure that there's some manufacturers that will listen to this that'll laugh because they know that I've called them, is, as the consultant, I take full advantage of my ability to control a lot of projects. And I'll call a manufacturer, and let's say I'm going to use a random, let's say you've got a bagged polishable overlay product, and that manufacturer's told you 2 weeks to get you product. Well, if I'm the consultant on your job, I make that call, you're picking it up tomorrow or the next day. If I'm not the consultant and I'm on another job, your 2 weeks got turned into 2.5 weeks because I called that manufacturer. I yanked your product to go to this job over here. There's too much of that happening. It happens to me every week. It seems like I'm having to call to pull favors, but I can do that as the consultant. as a contractor,
a lot of them,
I'm controlling 250, 300 million square foot of floor every year.
Yeah.
I've got the stroke that you as a contractor, or anybody as a contractor, is really hard for you to have. And so that is something that the contractors need to really think about.
And to utilize that resource. Reach out to the consultant on a job.
If there's a consultant on a job, there's not very many consultants out there that do our stuff. But the key thing for me is just no matter how much you like that salesman, find the salesman that you hate and get that guy too. Because the odds are, if you hate him, then everybody else hates him too, which means he'll be the only one left standing with product.
That's right.
Serious.
Yeah.
So find that guy and buy some product from him so you can be on his radar, because there's a good chance you're going to need it over the next few years, and all tied back to energy. So if the ships can't get here because they can't get enough diesel in Taiwan or Singapore or Nigeria or Bulgaria to get over here, supply chain gets backed up, your manufacturer doesn't have product available, you either have to pause on the job, but amazingly, your guys still have to feed their families. So that's kind of hard. So you have to pause, or, you've got to spend 3 or 4 times as much. You got to try. I would also recommend guys developing, especially regionally. Man, I think that our industry is too valuable. It's still too much growth for there to be a tremendous amount of headbutting competition locally.
Yeah.
I think that, man, anybody listening, if you can, find the Cracker Barrel, find your 5 biggest competitors locally, and go have lunch with them every other Wednesday, or breakfast with them every other Wednesday. Because I don't know what that sounded, but if you may be 3 joint kits short.
Yeah, you're going to need it.
And if you've got a local guy that knows that, hey, you know what, he lost that job to you, but he knows that you've got a bunch on order and he may need it later. He helps you out now, you help him out later. You're healthy competing on the projects. Don't healthy compete to destroy each other in the industry.
No.
And if you can help each other in the industry, if you do a good job, that gives more jobs, which means he ends up with more jobs.
Yeah.
Too many times. I mean, for years, we've been in this spot where, dude, I live a mile away from a guy and I haven't talked to him but once in 5 years because he's my competitor.
There's plenty of work.
Yeah. And the more cooperation there is there, I think that that's the only way that a lot of contractors will make it through this next few years. So there's a lot of energy tie-ins on the post-award and the pre-award. These are more, hey, can I think about the sales component? Can I think about the preparation component? What are the things that I can do without even having a job to do it with? And then after I've gotten the job, how can I help set things up?
Man, that's a great, those are a lot of great points. I'll be going back and re-listening to this just to try and get those in. I mean, like I said, it's the business of doing your business, that kind of goes down to the idea. Don't get so bogged down in just the grinding and the polishing. You've got to run a complete business. You have to be looking at all of those aspects.
Hiring, training, where do you find your work? What's your job mix? How do you get paid? How are you accepting payments? Banking relationships, lines of credit.
Oh yeah.
Insurance.
Bonding.
Yeah. Bonding and insurance. Insurance can make or break you.
Oh yeah. It can save you or destroy you.
Right. And I can tell you that probably 70% of the contractors that I talk to are poorly insured or significantly underinsured for the work that they're doing. And I've watched so many guys get just destroyed.
Yeah, you're one bad job away from being gone.
Yeah. Think about how many guys are underinsured on projects in Florida after the hurricane hit last week.
Yeah.
I've got a project that it ripped the whole roof off. Guy had 8 machines in a site. Site was flooded 3 feet up. All of his machines are done and gone. He had a $10,000, I think he had a $10,000 deductible on a $100,000 equipment policy. And he's got $400,000 in equipment gone.
God.
What do you?
Yeah.
He's not coming back.
Who would have thought that was going to happen? But it does happen.
Yeah.
And that's what insurance is for.
Right. So, build things for the maintenance, pay more attention to the customer on the back end. I think that that's how you make it through a bunch of these things.
And it's just good business for any kind of atmosphere. I mean,
It's not just for
those things.
business.
I mean, those things work during good times and bad times, recessions and surges. I mean, all of those are just good business tactics.
But I think that when everything's rocking, two things happen. Number one, guys get complacent. Contractors get complacent. They, well, I've been booked at 120% capacity for 3 years. It's not going to change because this is my recent memory. This is how it's been.
Yeah.
So that's how it's going to be. And then, I think that the other thing that happens in good times is you get so focused on the day to day because it's running so fast. It's like trying to sprint through a marathon. You get focused on this is what I'm dealing with today, all the fires today. And so that preparation doesn't happen. And then in bad times, sometimes you're not prepared. Well, this is a situation where we can pretty clearly see what's coming. There's too many indicators, bond yield, stock market, foreign currencies, just, Fed rates, the Portland cement orders. So if you look at the year over year Portland cement futures, the cement order for 2023 is 40% off of 2022. So what do you think that means for
how
projects?
Many people listening to this are on cement or on concrete allotments right now?
Oh, everybody's on concrete allotments already today.
Yeah.
Because we're down from 2021 orders. 2022 was, and there's a few pockets in the country that are using those. But when you talk about the last time that Portland cement orders futures were down that much, I think was 2007.
Yeah, the Great Recession.
Yeah. So, if nobody's ordering concrete for next year,
you're not polishing concrete the next year.
Well, I mean, it's all cyclical, right? Yeah. So, I mean,
as I've had to explain to a general contractor before, you need to have it here for me to polish it.
So, I mean, we have a lot of pretty good indicators about what's coming. And so hopefully people will, start that preparation before the boat gets a hole in it.
Yeah.
That's it for this episode. If you like this episode of Foundations, be sure to head over to our website, expertconcretetraining.com, for training videos and content tailored to your needs, interests, and job role. You can find topic and/or document links from today's discussion in the episode notes on our website. We appreciate your feedback, questions, and support. For specific job-related technical questions, please go to the Experts on Demand tab at expertconcretetraining.com. To suggest a topic for discussion on the podcast, please email info@expertconcretetraining.com. On behalf of David and myself, thank you for listening, and we look forward to hearing from you. The hosts and guests presented within this podcast have experience working with concrete, allowing them to provide insight concerning various construction conditions that might differ for the listener. The content and materials, as well as the products referenced within this podcast, are presented for general information only and are not presented as professional advice. Reference to specific products or service providers does not constitute an endorsement nor illustrate that a particular result can be achieved. Listeners should take care to follow all product manufacturers' warnings and instructions and understand all applicable safety codes. The opinions, views, and statements made within this podcast are those of the hosts and guests only. If you have any questions, concerns, or issues on your project and need additional support, please reach out to your manufacturer or consult with a firm like ours for specific and direct assistance with your particular needs and concrete.